Welcome, Your Eminence, to Conversations with the Chancellor. It's wonderful to have you as really my first formal interview. I did an earlier interview, as you know, with Father Timothy Savchuk, the Dean of the Kansas City Deanery. But we're doing this, of course, for our website, and I'm hoping and praying that this can be a regular feature in the life of the diocese, where we are able to interview and get to know not only our clergy, beginning with, of course, our beloved Archbishop, but also all of our deans, and then the lay persons that we have in our diocese who are also bringing and contributing so much of our diocesan contributing so much to our diocesan well-being. So, Your Eminence, again, welcome and your blessings. It's been an amazing year, hasn't it?
Very much so. I was thinking of that this morning as I was reflecting upon the fact that we're coming to the end of 2022, and at the end of 2021, none of us had any idea that I would be here, that the diocese would have a new archbishop, that His Eminence Archbishop Paul of blessed memory would have passed away. None of that was on the horizon. Just a few short 12 months ago, even less than that. So, but I'm grateful to be here as you're part of your first formal interview, and I'm very grateful that you're doing this because these interviews in the future will certainly introduce people who are involved in the life of the diocese in many different ways. Will introduce them to the diocese at large. And we have so many gifted and talented people throughout the diocese that it's good that people should know just how much talent and energy and dedication and devotion we have in both the clergy and the laity of the Diocese of Chicago and the Midwest.
And speaking of talent and energies, I'd like to kind of focus on what you're bringing with many of the best gifts that we've been blessed with to have you as our new Archbishop. One of the things that, as a Chancellor, I was most impressed, I have to say, is the fact that the Archbishop, Your Eminence, you have brought an experience of just pastoral presence that can only be kind of gained from being in parishes, and you're probably one of the bishops. There are a few, maybe a couple, who have not just a couple of years of parish experience or 5 years of parish experience where they're going to make somebody a bishop, but really 10, 15, almost 20 years. Is that correct? Of being both a priest and a bishop in a parish.
Well,
parish life.
Yeah. So my last assignment before coming to Chicago was in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was there for a little over 16 years, and most of that, well, over half of it, I should say, was as the parish priest or the parish rector. And then when I was consecrated to the episcopacy, I stayed in that role as a bishop. I was a bishop, and I was serving as chancellor of the Diocese of the West, but I was also continuing to serve the good people at St. Peter and Paul Church in Phoenix. In addition to that, I have quite a bit of experience, I would say, in church bureaucracy, in church administration. But I always saw that, through the years that I was involved with church administration, both in the Diocese of the West and for the national church, the Orthodox Church in America. But I always saw that bureaucracy or that administrative work as a ministry as well, because it is in service to the parishes, to the dioceses, and to the parishes. So in the end, church bureaucracy, and we have it at all levels, is really in service to the gospel.
And it has to be seen as a ministry, doesn't it? Even St. Paul speaks of this in a number of different places in his epistles about the ministry of being an administrator, whether that happens to be from the point of being a bishop or even being a priest or working, ministering in the life of a parish on a council. So all things must be done decently and in good
order. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very important. Back to this parish experience, which we really believe, especially as priests, is kind of the foundation of our diocesan life. Obviously, we need, monasteries, and that's one of our prayers that we'll be able to build up, the monastic presence here in our diocese. But the parishes and their vitality and their health is really critical. And how do you see that? Given your experience, and like I said, bringing this to the table as being something that we can further, in the life of the diocese.
Yeah, well, parishes, if we want to define parish, what that means, a parish is essentially a Eucharistic community. Yeah. And it's people who gather to celebrate the Eucharist, the Divine Liturgy, who also live their lives in the world, who go forth from the Sunday services, the Divine Liturgy. They go into the world. They go back to their lives in the world, their family lives, their education, their work, their employment, so on and so forth. And that's where the gospel is lived, and that's where the gospel is preached most effectively and most thoroughly. And so that is truly the foundation stone of the church, is the local church divided into local churches.
Yes.
So people might sometimes think in maybe a jaded sort of way that the parishes exist for the diocese. Yeah. It's quite the opposite. The diocese, the bishop, and those who assist him, such as you do as chancellor, those who assist him are in service to the communities, to the parishes, because again, that's where Christ's faithful people live, and that's where they exercise their vocations as Christians in the world.
So to speak, on the front lines.
So on the front lines, definitely.
Like being a Marine and being on point.
Definitely.
Those are the most exciting places, but the most difficult places as well, especially as our church journeys further into the 21st century. What, Vladika, do you see as being some of the most pressing challenges for our parishes? And of course, we could divide this up and speak in terms of pastoral work from the perspective of the priest, but just as the parish as a whole, what are some of the most challenging things that we're facing here as we have a new century? It's different than it was 30 years ago, isn't it?
It is, but at the same time, I always think it's the same. It always has been the church living in the world, relating to the world or not relating to the world. I think every generation says that we've never seen it like this before. It's worse than it's ever been. And,
we always say that.
We always say that, but
we catastrophize.
So correct. So we can say that now, just as people did 200, 400, 2,000 years ago in the early church.
It's never been so bad.
The challenge of communities is to live the gospel in an authentic way, to be faithful to Christ in the midst and in the face of all the pressures that the world puts upon us to try to pull us away from Christ. The world in which we live is dark. We all know that. We see that every day. If we read news, if we watch news, if we're just basically aware, we know that the world is a dark place. But again, we're recording this just a few days before the Nativity, so we think of the fact that Christ came into the world, light came into the world, and it's Christ and His light that illumines us, and through us the world. So
you're saying we shouldn't really see ourselves in the times that we live in as being any more exceptional than perhaps any other age.
Well, it's exceptional by the fact that it's our age.
Ours, yes.
It's our time. It's our
Right.
time. So,
Yes.
and so the challenges are real for us, just as they were real for those who've gone before us.
Absolutely. You also have some gifts in your canonical ministry within the life of our Orthodox Church in America, and perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your background with this.
Well, I do have a degree in canon law, and I'm one of the people who enjoys that kind of
Ministry.
ministry. That kind of
Offering.
The challenges it offers and the uniqueness of it. Law is not something that most people are particularly interested in. Church law, though, canon law, as I always understand it and as I explain it, again, along with bureaucracy, is in service to the gospel. Because what is canon law? Basically, canon law is ecclesiology and church morality and church teaching and church administration expressed in juridic language and legal language. What the canons tell us is who we are, how we do it, what we believe, why we believe it, all those kinds of things. Canon law supports all of that. Canon law in many ways is like etiquette. It used to be that when I was a kid, we were taught etiquette and how to
Good manners.
greet people, good manners, just
Yeah.
good manners.
Yeah.
And, to stand up when our elders entered the room, those kinds of things, to take your hat off when someone senior to you was there, those kinds of things. Those good manners. Well, canon law is basically good manners. What is it that etiquette does for us, that manners do for us? It makes everyone comfortable so that we all understand what the ground rules are and how to get along with each other. And that's what canon law tells us too. It tells us as the church how to conduct our life together as the church. So there's no great mystery in it, although it's something that has to be studied. There's no doubt about that. Because often these days we find people who want to get a hold of the canons and interpret them in their own way. That's as bad as trying to interpret the scriptures in your own way. So
what you're saying is that the canons are about doing that which is proper in the life of the church, as we say, the old Slavonic, dostoino, yes, it is right, it is proper, it is meet and right to do these things, axios esteem. But I also hear you speaking in this way about being respectful, about this is the higher element of the canonical tradition, church law and the life of the church. And then also there's a piece to this I'm hearing about the protection of the faithful within the canonical teaching of the church.
that's certainly true because, again, the canons, as we call them, the sacred canons,
Right.
are there to protect the life of the faithful, the life of the church. And the bishop has a special role within the diocese, of course, as the one who sees that the canons are lived properly, and it isn't just rules and regulations. Again, the canons have a pastoral approach to them, but they allow us to live in good order, to get along well, to play together well, if you will.
And there is a difference between a canon, which could perhaps be interpreted from the original the original Greek as being a guide or a rule, between the difference between a canon and law, right? I mean, law is something that is going to be a little bit more, self-evident, and sometimes the canons, like you say, are going to involve the discernment of the Holy Spirit.
Well, yeah. So if we think of civil law, what is it that makes civil law enforceable? Well, penalties and prisons and those kinds of things. Yeah. That's what makes civil law fear enforceable. Yeah. The canon law, the law of the church, the guidelines of the church are applied and are enforced. To use that word, are enforced in a pastoral way. The great, when we talk about the law in the church, we have to remember that the greatest law is always love. It's love. And the canons are aimed at the salvation of souls. That's what the canons are about. That we might love one another, love God and love our neighbor, and that we might work together in a harmonious way for the salvation of souls.
Yeah.
So that's the highest form of law.
How do you know, Vladika, when one of these canons might be something that is antiquated? And there are some, I believe, that are not so much that we're going to, close it up and send it packing, but we recognize the fact that, that the culture is different, the place is different. How do we know when a canon becomes more antiquated and will not be, let's say, enforced? And is there a good example of something akin to this?
Well, certainly, when we look at the compilation of all the canons of the councils, the ecumenical councils, the local and regional councils, and the writings of the fathers, those are all sources for canon law.
Yeah.
When we look at them, we see that there are many canons that were specific to a time or to a situation that have fallen into disuse.
And that are local. Some of them
And were very, very localized or responding to a specific need, and that need no longer exists. So it's a matter of the church lives its life in the current day and its current age, and there's just kind of a common acceptance, I guess, that certain things are no longer applicable. That's why it's very dangerous sometimes, I think, for people who don't have the background to study canon law. Everyone should study it, but to try to apply it is another story, because people go and they read canon such and such, for example, says you're not supposed to, clergy should not wear cologne. That kind of thing is, or that you should not have a Jewish doctor.
Right.
Those kinds of things are no longer applicable.
If you live in Brooklyn, good luck.
No, exactly. Exactly. There are other things that are similar to that as well. So the church just knows. And again, the person or the persons who know that or define that are the bishops. A given bishop and the synod to which he belongs.
Yeah.
They figure, we work conciliarly, and that's how things kind of progress.
Perhaps so we can, on the other hand, with some of the canons, perhaps there's an example of a canon that is not applied as it should be, and is really needed. And the one that usually comes to mind for the clergy, of course, is the canon having to do with only having one bishop in one city, and which really emphasizes the need for unity in the life of the church. But I've noticed in some situations that perhaps we can be a little bit less respectful or less mindful of what the canons are there for, and might be tempted to evade them or ignore them altogether.
Well, that's a classic example here.
Yeah.
Here in the United States and other parts of the world, Western Europe, for example, we have this multiplication of bishops. Here in the Chicago area, there are 4 bishops, for example, and basically their titles are all the same, pretty much, or at least similar. And that's not canonical, but somehow we allow it. We've accommodated it. We've allowed it to go on. That's why we hope and pray, for administrative unity among all the churches here in North America, so that anomaly of having several bishops in one city, that anomaly can be a thing of the past.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, absolutely. Let's move on. And since you've been here going on about a year, really, almost 9-10 months since you were first appointed as the administrator of the diocese, while our former Archbishop was ill and in the hospital. And so you do have a fresh perspective of how things are in our diocese, in our archdiocese now. Given this kind of set of new eyes coming in, what are some of the things that you see about the future of our diocese and where we might be able to continue to grow and thrive?
Well, I think there's so many good things that are already taking place in the diocese, but maybe it's time for a kind of a new set of eyes to take a look and at what the good things that are happening, and my intention is to gather people together in various areas of diocesan ministry so we might brainstorm or think tank or whatever the word is, so that we can see how we can improve things or maybe eliminate things or bring on new ways of doing things as well. I've been saying this whenever as I've been traveling, that there are a lot of good things. Even through all of these last months, the gospel has continued to be preached. The sacraments have been celebrated. The faithful are living the Christian life. Clergy are ministering. So the church's work never stopped. It hasn't stopped, and it will continue. But again, maybe with some new ideas, revisioning the work of the diocese, because this diocese is blessed in a lot of ways, many, many ways, primarily in the talent and the abilities of the clergy and the faithful. It's really amazing to know what talents are out there, and also it's exciting to move forward in helping everyone, encouraging and helping everyone to use those talents for the sake of the church.
Perhaps you could give us an example of one or two of those bright spots that you've seen so far. We have some interesting things happening in the Dakotas and elsewhere, of all places.
Correct, yes. So in the Dakotas, we'll be meeting shortly with people in North and South Dakota to missionize, to establish at least one mission that we're aware of, and to reinforce the good life that's going on in the parish communities there. The church is always missionizing and always should be missionizing. To a lot of people, the Dakotas don't sound like a very exciting place, but certainly a cold place when we think of Minot, for example, even Fargo. Right. Very cold there, but I think that's exciting. That's one thing that's exciting, that we'll be expanding and trying to kind of reorganize our missionary work. Also, something that I find exciting now is there are a couple of things. The St. Andrew of Crete Music Ministry is really exciting because we have a lot of musical talent in the diocese, and them coming together, those people coming together as the St. Andrew of Crete Music Ministry, really they're putting themselves in the service of the parishes. So through that, our talented musicians are assisting parishes throughout the diocese in working on their music and making the celebration of the divine services as beautiful as possible. And that in itself is missionary.
It really is.
Because people come to church, someone might have heard something about the Orthodox Church, or maybe they come to a liturgy or a service with a friend of theirs, kind of unwittingly or unknowingly, and they hear the music, and that is something that inspires people to take a second look, or maybe a third eventually. I know many, many people whose experience of the liturgy is what has brought them into the church. Also, something that is exciting for clergy, more specifically, though, for clergy wives, is that across the Orthodox Church in America, there's kind of a movement, a grassroots movement among clergy wives to come together and be of support to one another. And that is so important because, as we know, as you know, as all our priests know that have wives, the wife is the good woman behind the man who really makes things happen. And so to be able to bring them together so they can share with one another, so they can discuss the challenges and share the joys, is a wonderful thing. Not everyone will feel the need to be a part of that, but those clergy wives that do will certainly benefit from what I see taking place, and in this diocese too. So,
yes, I would agree wholeheartedly, and maybe that dovetailing off of this is for the people that are listening to us, especially our youth, and not just the young men, but the need that we have in our church, and the need that we have especially in the Archdiocese for vocations. Of course, vocations for the Holy Priesthood, that is really something that is a necessity. It's something we pray for as we move forward in the diocese. But I for one am really encouraged by the many young clergy that we have in the diocese as I've gotten to know the clergy much better these last few years as the chancellor, and the young clergy being well educated. Some of them are second career. We have second career seminarians, but it really kind of adds some certain dynamic to the diocese, to the archdiocese that I think is a real blessing.
Well, I think that in general now we're seeing people, particularly young people, coming to the church, finding the church. It seems to be a post-COVID phenomenon across the country. Across the country, our parishes are seeing an increase of young people who are coming to church. I think after COVID, asking big questions and looking for the big answers, and they're finding those at church. But as a result of that, I also see an increase of enthusiasm. Here in this diocese, I'm contacted pretty regularly with people who are interested in the seminary or interested in the St. Macrina Institute for Theological Education, with the hopes of possibly being ordained deacons. So I'm in correspondence with people. Priests are encouraging young men in particular to think about priesthood and ordained ministry in the church. And that's very important because it has to happen, again, at that grassroots level of the parish. Priests have to encourage.
Right.
And they see, something within people that might indicate that they would live a life of service in the priesthood, or the diaconate, or the monastic life for that matter too.
And perhaps even to nurture that on a more, not just a consistent basis, but also within the life of the church as our children, with our children, even when they're younger.
Correct.
Yeah, when they're younger. Let's speak about one more thing, and that's the need for a healthy monastic presence in the life of the diocese. And what would you ideally or prayerfully see the diocese doing as we move forward, and as we move forward with you as our new archpastor?
Of course, the monastic life is a life of prayer, and so I have the development of monastic life here in the diocese on the forefront and in the forefront of my prayer. As to the practicalities or how to do it, I don't know. We simply have to listen and to the Lord speaking to us, and hope and pray, and through all of that, kind of figure out how to develop monastic life here in the diocese
And monastic vocations.
and those monastic vocations.
Yeah. And we do have, examples of this with our Holy Resurrection Orthodox Monastery or Skeet in southern Missouri, with Mother Alexandra, these are areas of prayer and support that we can continue to supply.
Well, I have monastics everywhere praying for the diocese, but it would be nice
To
have
have
monastics
within the diocese
praying for us as well. So
Okay.
Mother Alexandra certainly does, but we need more.
Of course, yeah. Thank you, Vladika, Your Eminence, very much. And speaking on behalf of all of the clergy in the diocese, and certainly the deanery clergy here in Chicago, we are very grateful to have you as our chief shepherd, and our prayers and our love are with you as we move forward. I ask that you would pray, of course, not only for the diocese, but also especially for all of the faithful, the laity in the diocese, who continue to do such good things and make so many wonderful contributions.
Thank you. I take that the role of intercessor for the diocese very important. It's a very important role for me, and I take it very seriously. So people can be assured that even if I'm not praying for everyone in the diocese by name, everyone in the diocese is being